Hi everyone, my name is Erica and I'm a pelvic floor occupational therapist and I'm excited to start my YouTube channel today. So my first video is going to be about how I became a pelvic floor therapist. I get this question all the time, especially from new grad OTs, so I'm excited to just talk freely about how I got into it and what I think. So I went to grad school at a small school in New Jersey. This was an occupational therapy program. And I got into pelvic floor therapy is actually because I've always been a really dedicated feminist and someone who's really caring about sexual wellness. I grew up with a single mom who really taught me to fight for women's rights, and I grew up with a cousin who is a big and amazing YouTuber. Her name is Glamourpuss MD, and she talked all about sex education, and I think she has just been such a great influence for me in order to get into this space. So I've always been surrounded by these types of experiences. I've always been surrounded by really powerful women in my life, and so I wanted to make an impact on women as well. I just didn't know how. In undergrad of college, I ended up being SA'd by someone, and as a result started becoming really active in different types of SI organizations and different organizations to help victims. And at this time, I was kind of exploring pelvic floor therapy because I thought I might need it for myself. I wasn't able to start therapy due to the cost as a student, but it was still something that was on my mind, oh, interesting, I could do that. When applying to OT school, you actually need a few thousand hours of experience volunteering, or maybe 50 hours or 100 hours. I feel like it was 1,000 though. I'm not sure. But depending on the program, you'll need hours of experience. And so I happened to be just looking up OT places near my house. And there was one OT place that was breast rehab and healing for post-mastectomy. And so basically this OT did lymphedema therapy and then also upper extremity therapy. And that was my first intro to women's health, and I thought that was really, really cool. There is no pelvic floor instruction at my program. That was around 7 years ago, so I'm not sure about now, but most programs don't have a specific curriculum for pelvic floor providers. It's typically continuing ed. But anyway, I went to grad school in this small New Jersey program. There were no continuing ed classes for pelvic. Pelvic floor therapy was on the back of my mind, but I honestly didn't know how to become a pelvic floor therapist, especially as an OT, because it's kind of very niche and I didn't have a field work in it. So I decided to go into hand therapy. I was very selective with my hand therapy jobs, which I'm really happy about. And towards the end of my selection process for all my jobs, I ended up coming across a pelvic floor OT and hand therapy OT job. And that was on LinkedIn, actually. So for this job, I was like, oh my God, I should apply. This is my only way into pelvic world. Let me see what I can do in order to get this job. So I applied. I actually went through around 4 or 5 interviews and ended up getting the job, and that's how I become a pelvic floor therapist. I had to pay for my own continuing ed for the level 1 course before I started working, and then after I started working, they were able to pay for more courses for me, but I needed to pay for the original course on my own, and I couldn't start working until I took the course. So biggest question is, what courses do you take to be a pelvic floor therapist? So my course that I took was Herman and Wallace level 1. That's pretty much the standard for most pelvic health jobs, just because it's a really good course, and it's for PTs and OTs. There are OT specific jobs called the Lindsay Vestal course, but typically jobs in or around New Jersey and New York will typically request Herman and Wallace. That's my experience. It might be different nowadays. And there's also the APTA. If you're a physical therapist, you can also take that course, but OTs can't take that. So anyway, I took the level 1 course, and that's the requirement for you to start working, is taking the level 1 course. And it basically went over common conditions, how to do an internal exam, and how to, treat your general basic pelvic floor patient. I was lucky because at my first job, I was able to get mentorship and I was able to shadow a few days before my first date. So I felt comfortable going into it. I do feel it was still very scary and daunting to go into treating right after the course. Although the course was very knowledgeable and had a lot of information, it wasn't like super straightforward and didn't have all the answers, because at the end of the day, no one has all the answers. No one like will be able to give you like a straight up, here's how to treat at your specific clinic with your specific clients. Like that's all learning, and that's all like part of being a new grad essentially. But it was still very scary. And I think over time, after around 6 months of treating, was when I finally started feeling comfortable, especially because I was the only therapist treating pelvic at my clinic. It's very interesting because most people assume that PTs are the only people who do pelvic, but actually OTs are very qualified for this world. Essentially, like we learn so much about behavior changes and routines and habit changes and the human body and returning to normal function. And all of my patients are people who need habit change, routine change, behavioral change, and returning to their pre-symptom self. So for example, postpartum moms are the perfect example of someone who needs some functional training in the house. So for example, training the mom how to carry her baby correctly with proper form, training her to have good posture and improving ergonomics throughout the day, training her to return to exercise postpartum, being able to train her muscles to relax postpartum. Like there's so many different things you can do. Even like for constipation, training their behaviors, routines, and habits in order to improve their bowel function. Like this is such an OT world, and sex is an ADL. So I think whoever doesn't trust that OTs are important in this field are maybe not as educated as they could be. That's just my hot take.